If my first step is to look for something that's in common, what do 4, 18, and 14 all have in common? 2. So I'm going to take a 2 out before I start anything else. And so I'm going to say 2 out here. Then I have 2b squared plus 9b plus 7. All right. You can pair them up, or you can do the method where I showed you on your little handout. It calls it the rainbow method, where you go from 2 over to 7. So 2 times 7 gives you 14. We are now looking for factors of 14 that add up to 9. That is 2 and 7. A positive 2 and a positive 7 give you that positive 14 and add up to 9. So this is where I'm going to split this middle term. I'm going to leave the first term alone, 2b squared. The middle term is now going to be 2b and 7b. So 2b plus 7b. And then I add that last term. I leave that alone as well. Now that I have 4 terms, how do I factor 4 terms? Look at that handout. 4 terms, how do you factor? What method? By grouping. So I group the first 2 and I group the last 2. All right? This 2 on the outside is going to stay there. I'm going to look at this first group. What can come out of 2b squared plus 2b? 2 and what variable? B. So take a 2b out. 2 divided by 2 is 1. I had b squared. Now I just have b because I took out one of them. 2b divided by 2b. What is anything divided by itself? 1. In this second group, what can come out of 7b and 7? A 7 can come out of it. And I'm left with 7 divided by 7 is 1b, and 7 divided by 7 is just a 1. My final step here is to get my terms. So I'm going to leave this 2. That will stay. What I have in common is the b plus 1. And then what is left over is my second group. And that would be my final answer here. 2b plus 1, 2b plus 7. So this handed you 4 terms. This is going to be a factor by grouping from the very beginning. And so I'm going to start by grouping my terms, grouping my first, grouping my last. Remember, if there is a minus sign in the middle of my groups, I have to change my last term, change the sign of my last term. So I'm going to look at the 4 and the 32. What can come out between the 4 and the 32? A 4. What about the k cubed and the k squared? The lowest one, k squared. 4 divided by 4 is 1. And then I took out 2 of my 3k's, so I have one of those left over. 32 divided by 4 is 8. I took out both of those k's. Between the 5 and the 40, what can come out? 5. Can I take a variable out? Why not? 40 doesn't have one, correct. 5 divided by 5 is 1, and I did not take out a k. 40 divided by 5 is 8. And then for this one, I'm actually where I need to be to finalize it. K minus 8 is my group in common. 4k squared plus 5 is my second group. So that would be my final answer for this one. Number 14 is 2 terms. When it's 2 terms, I'm going to be looking for a special case. But what is my first step always? Look and see what is in common to all of it. Does 75 and 48 have something in common? All right, so they're both divisible by 3, and I know that because those digits add up. So I can take a 3 out of 75. What times 3 equals 75? Just go ahead and write that down. All right. And what about 48? 3 goes into 4 one time with a 1 left over. 3 goes into 18 6 times. All right. Now, this is 2 terms. It is subtracted. I have a special case. If you look at your handout, You have a special case of two terms that are subtracted. The rule is they have to be perfect squares, all right? Is 25 a perfect square? Yes, it is. What is the square root of 25? 5. B squared, any variable to an even number is a perfect square. The square root is just b. Does 16 have a perfect square root? Yes, it is 4. So anytime that happens and it is subtraction, then you're going to leave this out here if you had to take one out, and then it's going to be your plus minus. 5b plus 4, 5b minus 4. So my first step here is look for something in common. Does 8 and 48 have something in common? Yes, what is in common there? 8. So my first step is to take out an 8. I'm left with just n cubed minus 6 n squared minus n plus 6. All right. 4 terms, I'm going to factor by what method? Grouping. Group here. In between my groups, I have a minus. What do I need to do with that 6? Change the sign. It is currently a plus. I need to make it a minus there. All right. Then I'm going to move on to my next step. N cubed and 6n squared. Does it have anything in common? Right, it's a 1, but what about the variables? I can take out the lowest one, so I can take out an n what? To what power? To the second power. So here I took out 3 out of 3, I took out 2 of them, so I have 1 left. Here I took out all of my n's. This next group, if you do not have anything in common, what do I put out there when I'm doing it by grouping? What do I put there if I don't have anything in common? A 1, right? A 1. N minus 6. All right. And so then my next step is to take this 8, my group that is in common, and then what's left over, n squared minus 1. Now, the reason I chose this one is because n squared minus 1 is a special case. Does n squared have a perfect square root? Yes, n. Does 1 have a perfect square root? Yes. What times itself equals 1? 1. This is the difference of 2 squares. This is my special case right here under my 2 terms. So I can keep factoring this one. I have 8, n minus 6, and then this is going to factor to n plus 1, n minus 1. Because it is a special case. So when you factor by grouping, you get 2 terms, and one of them is squared. You may want to double check it to see if it's a special case. It may not be. You can factor by grouping and not have special cases, but sometimes you do, and in this case, we did.